Are you curious about Gestalt language processing? You are not alone. Join me, Corinne Smoose, and speech therapy PD for our podcast, The Gestalt Get Together. Our episodes try to balance the enthusiasm and excitement about GLP and its associated intervention ideas, as well as a healthy dose of skepticism about how to understand and integrate this paradigm shift into your career and the field at large. We hope that you can get together with us to learn more about Gestalts.
Welcome to SLP Learning Series, a podcast series presented by SpeechTherapyPD.com. The SLP Learning Series explores various topics of speech-language pathology. Each season dives deeper into a topic with a different host and guests who are leaders in the field. Some topics include stuttering, AAC, sports concussion, teletherapy, ethics, and more. Each episode has an accompanying audio course on SpeechTherapyPD.com and is available for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. Now, come along with us as we look closer into the many topics of speech-language pathology.
All right. Hello and welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining on this continued journey of self-discovery, self-connection, and growth. I'm your host, Stephanie Michelle Swigert. I'm a licensed and practicing SLP out in Los Angeles, California. I'm a school-based SLP, and my pronouns are she, her, and I also hold a certification as a teacher of mindfulness and compassion-based practices. Thank you so much, everybody that is here for this episode. Thank you to SpeechTherapyPD.com for this, just another amazing opportunity to connect with other professionals and learn and grow together and have this space for holistic self-development. We are getting ready to bring this mini-series to a close. I can't believe it. We're at our 6th episode, and I really want to express my gratitude to everybody who has been a part of this journey that we've shared together. And it's really been a unique experience to be able to share in our field in this type of format. So just having your support with the listeners chiming in the chat box, with your emails that you followed up with and your questions and concerns, it's really made this journey truly special for me. So I really appreciate just knowing that the discussions have resonated with many of you. So thank you so much. Your feedback has been very valuable and immensely rewarding. So before we get started, I do have a few things that I have to alert you to. And the first one is that this podcast provides informational and educational content only. This is not a substitute for professional therapy. Discussions aim for self-discovery, and it offers mindful strategies for addressing work challenges. The suggestions are not definitive solutions for your circumstances. Your choices are your responsibility. So seek professional advice for personalized support for yourself. By listening, you do acknowledge that information is general in its nature and it may not suit your needs. That's okay. Exercise caution and consult relevant professionals before making decisions. Let's dive in now to today's episode. I want to point out that each episode is 60 minutes. It's going to be offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. As far as my financial and non-financial disclosures, for financial, I am the owner of a non-public agency, Golden State Speech Pathology Services, which is a staffing agency in Southern California. I also receive an honorarium and speaking fees for professional development that I provide, and for this episode for ShiftMakers. I also receive compensation for the sale of digital courses that I have available for sale. And for my non-financial disclosures, I do not have any at this time. I'm very excited because you'll see that I do have a guest with me here today who has so graciously offered their time and their wisdom to really share a personal challenge that they've faced in the workplace. This is Margarita Dela Cruz, who was born and raised in San Fernando Valley in California. She's currently working as a bilingual SLPA in home health, the early intervention setting. And she's very proud to be able to support families in her community, anything speech or non-speech related. And before getting her license as an SLPA, Margarita worked for a school district for over a decade, really gaining her valuable knowledge and skills when working with children, their families, and other school staff as well. And currently she's interested in becoming much more involved in the speech world by connecting with other SLPs and SLPAs such as yourself who's listening, to really share and create resources that are going to help everybody become better therapists and just greater human beings. Her financial disclosures, do you have any to share at this time, Margarita?
No, I mean, just that I was invited to speak as a guest in speech therapy PD by you. And yeah, I have no other non-financial disclosures.
Perfect. So so for financial disclosures, then that would just be the honorarium for this podcast and no financials. Thank you so much. So Maggie, is there anything that I missed that maybe you want to tell us about yourself or something that you're currently involved in the speech world?
No, you pretty much covered it all. I'm currently working in home health, early intervention, and I just find it extremely rewarding. And I think that's kind of where I'm going to stick to for a while. I don't know if you've ever done early intervention.
I have not. Not early intervention. I will say for my externship, actually, as I'm flashing back 17 years ago, in my externship, I'm dating myself. I worked at a clinic, and we did do some home health for just a few weeks. But after that, I haven't had experience once in the field.
Yeah, no, I mean, the littles are very little.
Yes.
They're pretty much in diapers most of the time, but I mean, they're fun. They're definitely from a different perspective. I mean, anything speech, you gotta like notch it down very, very low when it comes to like anything that they relate to. I mean, even CVC words, for example, like I have to think of like, pee pee, poo poo, like something that they are used to.
That's probably coming up a lot in their vocabulary, actually.
Yeah, I mean, mama, papa, just like very, very basic stuff. So, but I mean, I love it. Seeing them just progress on their own, and even like with the help of family and obviously early interventionists in general, like it's very rewarding to see.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you're contributing to our field. We can dive into today's episode. This is Voices of Change, and this is empowering professionals through compassionate communication. For those of you who are listening to this episode, I've also prepared something special for you. You can scan the QR code in the handouts where you can download our workbook companion. This is a tool that Margarita and I are going to use as we navigate through today's topic. So grab that QR code, have the handouts and the framework ready, and let's get ready to dive into this conversation that hopefully isn't just informative, but experiential for Maggie and myself as well. The first objective that we're really looking at that we're going to touch on is understanding ethical challenges that SLPs, SLPAs, I'm sure many helping professionals in the field face, and the impact it has in our roles. And I think that some of the ones that really jump out at me, there are many challenges that we have in this profession. Some of them are all too common. I think confidentiality is one of the biggest ones that has really come up because it's balancing this need for information sharing, right? We have to maintain the privacy of our clients, but we also have to figure out how are we going to collaborate, because we do collaborate with other health professionals and educators and family members, but respecting their privacy as well. Informed consent's a big one. We've got lots of documentation to support us in making sure that we have permission before we proceed and perform tests. So there can be ethical challenges that can arise, especially if we're working with clients who maybe have limited decision-making capacity, right? So we need to consider when we're working with minors, when we're working in the school systems and home health and clinics, and also thinking about, how can we ensure that the families or the caregivers understand what we're asking and we are getting that proper consent. Cultural competence is definitely a piece that comes up, making sure that we've got a lot of professional development in this field now around culturally competent care. It is crucial. And I think as speech therapists, we can say that we face a lot of challenges in just understanding and respecting diverse cultural practices and beliefs and communication styles. And we might be touching on that a bit later today as well. But really just ensuring that therapy is culturally sensitive, it is inclusive when we are working with our clients and our families. Conflicts of interest can come up. This is a big one. So this is where our professional judgment might be swayed or shifted a little bit or influenced by personal interests or maybe financial interests. So avoiding these is going to be really important. Avoiding these conflicts of interest and remaining neutral. When we talk about staying objective, this neutral language, removing our evaluations from it will be really key in the decision-making process. When we think about our scope of practice, this comes up a lot. I don't know about for you, Maggie, but just in understanding our role, we talked about this a little on the phone, understanding roles and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so I'm being asked to do something, but that's not in my scope of practice. It doesn't fall under my scope of practice. So what's going on here? And I think we're going to be touching on that a little bit more in this episode as well.
Right.
But there are so many different things to consider. I mean, when it comes down to continuing education, being ethical with that, with when we're advocating for our clients, when we're looking at our billing and our reimbursement processes, right? These are all things, maintaining professional boundaries. There are a lot of ethics that come up with just establishing and being able to maintain like what's appropriate, this boundary, professional boundaries between, yourself and myself, or with myself and the clients, or myself and the families. This is going to be really important. Technology with COVID, I know technology has really, do you use technology, Maggie, at all? Because I know you're in the homes, but
the company I work for, we get tablets, like iPad tablets, to take with us for notes purposes and then signatures to collect afterward.
Yes. Yeah. So very important, right? The information that we're putting on there and the signatures, all of this in telepractice and online communication. We have to really protect and make sure that we are handling all of this electronic health information responsibly. So lots of different challenges and ethical considerations when we are reflecting on our career. And today, Maggie is going to share with us an ethical challenge that has come up for her. We asked her in a questionnaire that went out via email, what is your situational conflict or challenge, current or past, and how has it affected your well-being, your stress, worry, or emotions? Include necessary details, but not names. And so I'd kind of like to start there. If you want to give us just a little snapshot of your story, the one that you submitted to us on your questionnaire.
Yeah, so this agency that I worked for in the past, not currently with them any longer, we had a certain developmental reports that we had to do, I think I would say quarterly, and those were pretty lengthy. They followed the DRDP outline, for those that are familiar with the DRDPs. And so that goes into things that are outside of speech. Like immediately, we have like physical skills, gross motor, fine motor, cognitive skills, which, some of these things do overlap with speech, obviously, but there was a lot of that being placed on us to report on, and by us, I mean speech therapists, and as well as there was another position as well. They were called early childhood teachers. Mm-hmm. So they were also like asked to do the same report. So immediately I noticed there was like the same responsibilities for both positions. And that kind of like made me question it a little. I was like, well, okay. And also it was just outside of speech. So I was a little curious over how that was going to work out. Right. But I'm pretty open-minded and it's a new job. And I figured like, you know what, I'm excited. This is a preschool setting, working with preschool students. I'm like all for learning and figuring it out and seeing how I can help. But yeah, it just became eventually a little bit unattainable, or just in general, like a lot overwhelming. Mm. Because besides these reports, your daily responsibilities, your daily admin tasks, which is session notes. And when it comes to school settings, a lot of us usually do groups. So it's about 4 max, but even that number got pushed kind of near the end of the year, just because, students are being identified with these needs of needing speech services throughout the year. So our caseload just gets higher and higher, and then we don't have those caseload caps. So that's where it gets a little crazy.
Yes, I'm hearing the craziness. I'm hearing that you were overwhelmed. Also, if you could share with us, you mentioned that when you were not able to get to all of the reports, who completed the reports for your students? I mean, in general.
Yeah. So, that was
the other very important part. These reports were supposed to be completed by us, and if not, the admin team would help us fill in the missing gaps, which was interesting because I don't recall the admin team going to see these children or service them directly. Yeah, so that was a little questionable.
So that sounds like a big ethical dilemma right there that you're facing.
Right.
Like, okay, I've got, all of these demands in my role that I have to do. I have these comprehensive developmental reports for my students that maybe the admin team doesn't know. There was maybe some pressure coming from the admin team to complete these, to get these done, right? And it was kind of impacting your direct therapy time. You're talking about these bigger group sizes, 4 or 5 kids, lots of kiddos in a group.
And it increased to like six max. Like,
right.
pretty safe.
I had to take a deep breath just thinking about that. I'm like, especially that age group.
Yeah, 6 4-year-olds, just like group therapy for 45 minutes. It's just like, wow, okay.
Yes. So I'm hearing a lot of things that have raised valid ethical concerns for you. And it sounded like in this process, you decided to prioritize a healthy work-life balance. You were like, I have my boundaries. I am not going to be able to complete these reports. And I want to say that that's very commendable because there's a lot of people that don't know their boundaries or know how to speak up for their boundaries. And it's really, it's unfortunate that, that the administration didn't understand or see the ethical concerns with what was happening in the environment, right? So I think leaving that situation is what you mentioned you decided to do.
I did. I mean, I did question just returning at a like supervision role for the next school year's providers, and they were willing to talk about that and give me that opportunity to assume a supervisory role because they got so much great feedback from all the school sites that I serviced, all the school staff, teachers, site supervisors included were like just praising me and throwing my name out there like I love how she works. So, I mean, they obviously wanted to keep me, and I felt motivated by all the praise that I was like, I would like to help others, kind of manage everything that I managed and create boundaries where they need to create boundaries. But in the end, it was too big of a monster for me to kind of battle alone. And I felt like there was an honesty key missing between those above me and myself that I felt like it didn't start off in an honest way and it didn't continue in an honest way. And I just didn't trust that they would support me in a supervisory role in the following year. So I decided to not return.
Right. Yes. And I'm hearing because your need for honesty, your need for trust, dependability, for an ethical work environment, professionalism, you just couldn't check those boxes. Mm-hmm. So at that point, you had to make a decision that was best for you and say goodbye and move forward. So we asked you, how do you typically handle conflicts or disagreements in your personal professional relationships? And you mentioned that you tend to evaluate your conflicts on your own first before bringing them up because you want to make sure that it's a problem that you can solve independently, right, on your own first. And I want to dive into that just a bit and talk about, it sounds like you might have a process, right? A process for handling challenges. So I'm wondering if you can just shed a little light on that process a little bit for our listeners when these things come up.
Yeah. So it sounded a little therapeutic the way you put it, but yeah, I mean, definitely, I definitely do. I have trouble asking for help, I guess. And that comes from like me just taking a lot of responsibility for the challenges that I face. And that's not always fair to me, because there's challenges and things that I really don't have complete control of. And I should be asking for more help than trying to face these things on my own. But usually when I do face a problem, I think about what things I can actually, what things I have control of versus what I don't have control of. So I don't have control of other people. I don't have control of their thoughts, their feelings. There's no, even if there was an action that I felt like they purposely did this because we just had a conversation about this. And now I'm getting these reminders that I need to be more on top of let's say admin tasks or something, and I feel defensive, I immediately just tell myself, wait, hold on. Like, what can you control yourself? Okay, let's control myself first. And then
Love
I
that.
tell myself, like, okay, now we do not control others. We do not control others. We do not control others. But what would we like from the other person? What is something that you really need from that person right now? And if it's support, I just straight up ask for support. I say, you know what? This is my problem. Unfortunately, like, this is what I'm facing. And you can help me in this way. So, like, even if it's, your boss, your supervisor, it can obviously feel very intimidating for people that are not used to speaking up for themselves, and people that are used to dealing with things themselves, like I am. It can be very intimidating. It takes a lot of practice, but
And
maybe
that's why I love you sharing this. I know you said it sounds therapeutic, but it's like, let's get our coffee and sit down and have that chat, because there are so many people, and I'm not a therapist. That's why I gave the disclosure in the beginning. But I think it's important for people just to know that it's so common, and just to normalize that we all have fears. We all have fears to show up at times and to advocate on our own behalf and to say the things that need to be said for the change to happen. And I really appreciated how you shared, like, what is in my control, what isn't in my control, like, what do I have the power to do? You mentioned something like, I know I need to calm myself down first. And I think all of these strategies are so very important. And I'm really excited for your openness and your vulnerability to share this, because I think it is something that many people who are listening can relate to. I know I can relate to, that we all have those situations that it's just like, what's going to happen if I speak up? Is there going to be retaliation? Am I going to lose my job? Am I just going to be viewed as a complainer? And we talked about this on episode 3 in this podcast. We were talking about habitual ways of responding to conflict, which I had sourced from Oren J. Soffer's book, and it's called Say What You Mean. I love this book. And the 4 different ways, for common ways, not an end all be all, but was conflict avoidance, right? Like, I don't want to deal with it. I'm out of here. And that was me many years ago. When things like hit the fan, I hit the streets, I was gone. I was like, nope, done. Conflict confrontational is that, like, I'm up in your face, I might get louder, my tone might change. It's like, I'm going to put my needs, as the priority, like with a lot of maybe more like demand type of language. Then we've got passivity, which is, okay, I'll do it. And meanwhile, you're thinking, I really didn't want to, but I'm a people pleaser, and I just want to keep the peace and harmony, but I'm forgetting my own needs. Kind of like you said, like, you're like, I realize, like, I'm forgetting about myself, right? Like, when we're doing what others want us to do, if it doesn't align with our desires. And then the passive aggressive is, that individual who goes ahead and says, yeah, I'll do it. And then meanwhile, behind your back, they're like saying things that are negative, or not doing the full assignment, or maybe not doing the best job with it, as sort of their retaliation. So, and for those people who are listening, maybe you identify with one of those, maybe you don't relate to any of those. I mean, there are people that do have processes, like Maggie shared, like processes that I have, or ways that you can communicate in your own way. There's many different communication styles out there where you can have open and honest dialogue, where you can sit down, where strategies can be formed, and collaboration can feel more like a breeze. There's those people that can they do it. They're doing that thing and it comes easily for them. So for anybody that's listening, if you want to dive a little deeper into the type of conflict, habitual way of responding to conflict that you might have, that is on episode 3. But another thing that's really challenging too, I think, for people is specific emotions that come up in those challenges, because I'm a very emotional, sensitive individual. And people used to say that, what was the expression? I wore my emotions on my sleeve, right? So you would know, like, how I was feeling. And I'm wondering for you, do you think when these challenges are coming up in a professional setting, are there any type of emotions that are a little harder for you to find a way to express or be in open dialogue with?
Yeah, I mean, there were moments where, as a provider in this preschool setting, I would deal with. Oh, that already sounds bad the way I worded it. I didn't deal with people. I, had conversations with people, or I would get maybe some feedback, or I think a lot of people would be confused as to like who I was half the time because I was a traveling SLPA like from different sites. It would take a while for people to know like what I was doing there, who I was. And then I think there's a lot of like, when it comes to adults, there's like this hierarchy of titles or something going on sometimes where they feel, I don't know if it's threatened by my expertise or my like wanting to come help support in their classroom when it comes to speech and language. And I'm not the most consistent person there because I have all these other sites to support. So of course, these direct teachers or site supervisors are the ones really carrying the difference there of the carry on with its students. They're the ones practicing daily, seeing them, feeling like they're probably making more progress with the students than I am, which completely understandable. So there was moments where I would not only feel it, but I would get maybe comments here and there of like, oh, who are you again? Kind of like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, and I took it without the tone. I took it without the face. I took the words, not their attitude. And I was like, oh, Margarita Dela Cruz, I'm the speech therapist. I'm here to see so-and-so and so-and-so. Like, is this a good time? If not, when can I start? Where can I sit? Where can I work? So there was a lot of having to like dodge, pick your battles.
So yes, and I'm hearing that you had to navigate some of your own frustrations with that and those encounters.
Yeah, and it's hard because sometimes I would just not be having one of those days where I had the patience. If this person gives me attitude one more time, I don't know how I'm going to react, but and that's okay. Like we're not always 100%. We're not always in that state of mind where we can be dodging these things. Sometimes we can't deal. And so, there was times where I just had to say, give me a second and pretend like I got a call from my supervisor or something and just like, take a deep breath, come back in.
Self-care. Yes. So you saw that moment and you took self-care. Because what I'm thinking about when I told you I used to just, when things hit the fan, I was right. Anger was like a big thing that came up for me. I'd be very like angry and holding on to these feelings where I had all this blaming and judging. So I focused on what I thought people were doing wrong in the environment. And in doing that, it created more of this anger in my mind because I was like, and it's like you say, pick your battles. I think, but I was choosing to kind of focus on these things that were making me so upset. So anger was hard for me to be able to come out and say what's on my mind. And I know this is something that comes up for people in my team. I know this is something that we've talked about in another episode that when we're angry, people think, oh, I shouldn't be angry. Like I shouldn't share anger in this way. You've even mentioned in the questionnaire that if you're experiencing anger, you tend to keep it to yourself, that you don't think that it's helpful to express it. And so I thought it was important just to kind of touch on real quickly before we move on to our next part of our episode is really just this idea that seeing anger in a way is energy, not good or not bad. So it's this energy, right? It's this wisdom that is rising up in us. It's like fuel, if you will, right? That's going to give us what we need to get to a place that we need to be. But at that point, it's our decision on, well, do I want to use up all this fuel, all these precious resources that I've got from this wisdom, right? This fuel, spending it judging and blaming and complaining and telling everybody who will listen, how awful these people are and what I'm going through. Or do I want to use that fuel, that energy that is coming up in anger, right, at different levels, and use it to now connect back to what's going on for me. What am I feeling right now? What am I needing? What are my unmet needs that's causing so much anger right now so that I can begin to advocate for myself, so I can get clear on what boundaries I need to set or what steps I need to take to get my needs met, or what I need to do to create, we always say, be the change you want to see in the world, right? So it's like, I can use this now to start to create the things that need to happen. And sometimes that's just leaving, walking out the door when things, when you've tried different things and it's not working out. Sometimes that's the safer or the better option. So it's really, this stopping and connecting with our breath and realizing I've got all these judgmental thoughts that are happening, but let's come back to myself for a minute. Like you said, you stepped outside and you're like, I had to take a breath, right? And we self-connect. And that self-connection is a very important strategy that you mentioned that I hope all the listeners are grabbing onto right now, because that self-connection to just stop, going down the rabbit hole, stop the train dead in its tracks, notice what's going on for you, notice what you're needing, and then learning a framework for advocating if that's your choice to do so. We'll kind of talk about, you don't have to advocate. I mean, again, there's different communication styles, but being able to now find a framework to say what's going on in a way that people are going to listen. Their ears are going to open. They're not going to be thrown onto the defense as soon as you come in, because you are relating it back to I statements. You're connecting to your feelings, your unmet needs, and then you're willing to have that open space to collaborate for strategies. So I wanted to jump into that framework. I know you are familiar with it because you've been in another podcast. You've mentioned you also have downloaded the workbook. I know you've got some questions about that framework, so we're going to use the Q&A to dive into those questions in just a little bit closer towards the end of this episode.
Are you taking advantage of our new amazing feature? The Certificate Tracker. The free CE Tracker allows you to keep track of all of your CEUs, whether they are earned with us at speechtherapypd.com or through another provider. Simply upload your certificate to your registered account and you're all set. So come join the fastest growing CE provider, speechtherapypd.com.
But for those listening, if this is your first time on the episode, or if you haven't downloaded the downloadable workbook in your handouts, this is a framework that is nonviolent communication that is developed by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. You can learn more about him at cnvc.org, the Center for Nonviolent Communication.org. And it is a framework that, if it works for you, can really be applied to address challenges or conflict or ethical dilemmas that you are having in the workplace. So I thought I would just start by kind of bullet pointing those for our listeners. The first one is just observation. So we're removing any evaluation from what we're seeing. We're just clearly and objectively describing a behavior that we see, right? So we're sticking to the facts, right? We're just sticking to the facts without putting in, as best as we can, our interpretations or personal judgments. So Maggie, I don't know if you want to play along for this or not. If you've got the handouts ready, I'm wondering if you want to maybe take a stab at your situation. Maybe together we could kind of work through this, like a little workshop here on figuring out maybe 1 to 2 sentences, like summarizing what you have told me. Let's see if we can come up with 1 or 2 sentences about your situation that led to your ethical dilemma. And I want to invite you to, and already in my listening, I'm hearing you have a lot of neutral language. So I'm thinking this will be pretty easy for you. And I heard that self-correction too, that awareness, which is so beautiful to have that awareness when we speak and to hear that. So I want to invite you to try to just use 1 or 2 sentences that are free from judgment and blame and put it into neutral statements to come up with 1 or 2 sentences about the dilemma as it involves those assessment reports. We'll needle right in the assessment reports and your situation around who was doing those.
Okay. Am I speaking to, let's say, a coworker friend about this, or am I speaking directly to a supervisor about the dilemma? Or
yeah, good question. So who do you want to speak to? I mean, I can be that person. We can role play. So, do you want to? I mean, if you were going to approach this in the school setting, who would you approach?
I guess I wasn't directly working for the schools that I was visiting. I was under an agency, so I'd probably talk to my coworker about it before going to talk about it with the higher ups. So
perfect. So what we're going to do is I'll give you a little sentence starter, and this is for anybody that's listening too. When you're doing this exercise, we as speech therapists, we have our sentence starters that we use with our kiddos. I'm going to give you guys a sentence starter. When I observe, or when I see, or when I hear, or when I notice. So we're going to start with that, but we're not going to go into the I feel. So you're just going to fill in that phrase now. When I see, when I observe, or when I hear, and then give me a little sentence about that. And we know that the sentence isn't going to end because we're going to move on to feelings next, and we're going to keep building on with this exercise.
Okay, no, that's a great sentence starter. I feel like I've probably already used that before, actually. When I see an email reminder from the administration team
Yes.
about completing my notes on a daily basis, I feel
Okay, so we'll stop there. So we're going to go with the observation.
Sorry.
This is great. No, this is great. So we're going to go with the observation of, and that was very neutral. When I see an email, you told me very clearly it's an email. It's coming from administration about your notes needing to be done daily. Very neutral, very clear. So the second step is connecting to a feeling now. And this is really trying to identify and express the universal feelings for you. So in that workbook, there's universal feelings and universal words. Is there, for the purpose of this exercise, we'll stick to the universal feeling words within the chart. Are there 1, 2, 3 maybe that come up for you from that situation?
Yes. So there's annoyed.
Annoyed,
Annoyed. I feel frustrated and irritated.
Oh.
Those are good.
Yep. And I'm taking notes because somebody once said a short pencil is better than a long memory. I've held on to that because I need all the help I can get with remembering things. So there we are. Okay. So I've got irritation, annoyed, frustration. Very good. Okay.
I know
So
they're all pretty similar,
but that's okay. And it's interesting because we're building our vocabulary now, our emotional vocabulary. Some people might not be able to, and that's okay. If you're listening and you're like, I don't really know what I'm feeling. I can't connect it to, I can only sense it and I can't come up with a word for it. That's okay too. But this vocabulary bank, the purpose of this is to, just like in observations where we pulled out the evaluation to stay neutral. So we went from staying away from evaluation to just observations. With our feelings, we're staying away from opinions and we're sticking to universal feeling words. So what I mean by that is if we used a feeling word such as abandoned, if I said, Maggie, you abandoned me, I feel abandoned, or just Maggie, I feel abandoned, there could be some defensiveness. I mean, if somebody told me I abandoned them, I might go on the defense with that because that abandoned is a feeling word that insinuates you did something to me. So with universal feeling words, we're trying to express the same message, but we're using the feeling words that will connect us more with others. So when I was in the disagreement with my coworker and you left the room, I felt alone. So there, when I say alone, maybe I can express to you the same idea. You weren't there. I wanted you there. But abandoned could be off-putting, right? And it could throw you into this fight, flight, freeze, the stress response. Whereas if I say, I feel alone or I feel lonely, maybe we're diffusing that conflict a little bit. So that's why I think these universal words that Marshall shares are so important because they really spend a lot of time looking at those words and separating out. Or if we said something like, I feel like you just up and left me in that situation. I feel like you just up and left me. We talk like that all the time. We say, I feel like, and anytime we say like, it's an opinion versus a feeling. So we want to remove that and get back to those universal feelings. So irritation, annoyed, frustration, we got it. These are great. So let's go to needs. You have the universal needs box. And with needs, what we're separating now, again, separating evaluation, separating out opinions. With needs, we're separating out strategies because there are many strategies to meeting the same need. And when we get so hung up on it has to be this way, and our communication partner is like, no, and we're like, no, it has to be this way. And they're like, still no. And we get really upset. We are not opening up to all of the different possibilities that could be out there or diverse perspectives, unique perspectives that could be out there. So we're moving away from strategies and we're connecting to needs. So for the purpose of this exercise, let's look at that needs box. And when you think about, you've got this email, it's coming in from admin. They're asking you to do daily notes, feeling irritated, you're feeling annoyed, you're feeling frustrated. What are you needing right in that moment, do you think?
I'm needing a check-in. Like, how do you think I'm feeling right now? Let's check in with me first. Hey, Margarita, I noticed you haven't been submitting your notes daily. Is there something that I can support you with? That's
Okay.
what I'm from my admin team.
Okay, so let's go down to this need box and let's see if check-in, a check-in,
Or
maybe-
something close to check-in. Let's see.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're needing some communication with admin, right?
Yeah.
No, wait, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, yeah, because you're talking about a check-in with admin or a check-in with your agency. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like a check-in with admin or well, yeah, they're I guess synonymous because the
Yeah.
admin is like part of agency team. So
Let's go a little higher. What do you think the need is that check-in supports? If you got that check-in from them, what does that give you? Does it give you clarity? Does it give you closeness? Does it give you the feeling of the communication that you wanted? Does it give you more peace in your life?
it gives me closeness. It gives me trust. Like they trust me to do my job adequately and timely, but they know something might be going on that maybe I'm not asking for help when I could.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Closeness, trust. Is there one more that you just mentioned? Closeness and trust. Those are good.
Yeah, support. I guess there's a support in there.
There's support in that. Yes. So by them checking in, that meets your needs for support. That meets your needs for trust. That meets your needs for closeness. So do you see now how a check-in is a strategy? It's a strategy that's meeting a need. So great. So now we've got our observation. We know our feel how we're feeling, and we know that our feeling comes from this unmet need. Maybe it sounds like my needs for trust, my needs for closeness, my needs for support are not being met, and I'm getting further irritated, and I'm getting further annoyed, and I'm getting more and more frustrated, right? So that brings us in now to our request. And this is the fourth step: observation, feelings, needs, request. So we want to make a request. So if this is something you're needing from admin, I would think the request would be with admin, right? So we're going to formulate. So now we're going to put all these pieces together. So when we think about a request, we want something that is clear. So when we ask it, they know what it is we're asking. Because when it's not transparent, when it's vague and it leaves room for interpretations, they might think they're doing something, but it's not what you wanted them to do, right? So it's not going to meet your need. And the point is we want to meet your needs. We want to have the trust, the closeness, and the support. So we think about that. Okay, what strategies can I propose? Because we want them to be actionable. We want to be clear. We want it to be positive, right? Because when we're making requests, we don't want to make a request that would be at the expense of somebody else's well-being. We want to consider that. We want it to be a positive request, and we want it to be actionable. So I kind of heard in your talking this check-in. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's go with the check-in. And how can we make a check-in really clear? Because there's a difference between, me saying to an SLPA I'm working with, hey, I want you to check in with me next week, versus me saying, let's connect on Wednesday between like 12 and 2 for about 20 minutes on the phone. So we just want to be really clear and give as much information as we can to set the person up to understand what it is that we're asking, to see if it's something that is possible for them. So what is how could we be clear, positive, and actionable with your check-in? What would that look like? What is describe the check-in?
So you know what, hearing you talk about these actionable steps actually reminded me of one of the staff on the admin team. Actually, I feel like I learned this from her. She was quite well at communicating compared to like other people that I've worked with in the past when it comes to like admin and providers. I feel like we had similar ways of communicating. And one of them was she would offer her support and she would ask how I would need that support in time. Like, as in, I need more admin time to get these notes done. And so she would be very direct, like, oh yeah, for sure. How much time would you need? And that was fair for her to ask, because if I need more time, how much time am I talking so that she can schedule me some time in my day? So this is something that I realized, like, oh, like this is something I picked up while working with this agency. So like, it wasn't all bad. I mean, I've got some good, coworkers. I have some good communication there every now and then.
Yeah.
But so that I learned from her and I realized, okay, next time I have this conversation, or like multiple times that I emailed with admin before, I would be prepared ahead of time to calculate how long I think I would need to get these things done, based on based on like my previous number of like, I already knew how quickly I could get certain notes done within X amount of time. And I would tell them, you know what, unfortunately, I don't have time for that in my schedule. I haven't had time for that in my schedule as of lately on a daily basis. But if you would give me so and so amount of time this week, I will get those done. So those were some actionable steps that I took from her.
I love that. It sounds like the communication, the dynamics between you two was very positive.
Yeah. Well,
and more effective than probably in the work that you were doing together.
So, I mean, I wouldn't have known what to ask for either. It's like, for anyone who's listening, it's not, sometimes at your job, you don't know what the actionable step might be, but that's where you can have that conversation, and see your admin team or your supervisors can help support in those actionable steps and creating those actionable steps with you.
That's it. You nailed it. So if you don't know that, I mean, and you can make a list, because again, we talked about there's so many different strategies to meeting a need. So if your check-in is one strategy to meeting closeness, trust, or support, but admin's like, I don't have the time to check in this many days, this much time, or whatever, because of everything else we have going on. It's like, you could also say, well, that brings us into, let's roll through this now, because that brings us into the request. So like what you're sharing is we could request to strategize together on how to increase that trust, that support, that closeness. So when we're putting this all together, this NVC framework, you want to express your observations, your feelings, your needs, your requests, but you want to do so in a way that it's going to support connection with one another. It's going to support understanding. It's also understanding where the other person is coming from when we are collaborating. Doesn't mean agreeing. It just means understanding their perspective, putting yourself in their shoes to understand it, because this is going to help, possibly, not always, maybe bring a resolution, maybe diffuse conflict, or, make the change that's necessary for those ethical dilemmas in your workplace. So if we were to run through this, then using the taglines, this would look like, when I receive an email from admin asking for my daily notes, I feel irritated because I have a need for trust, and it also sparks some annoyance because I'm needing support right now in this role with my current caseload and workload. And I'm feeling frustrated because my need for closeness with the team is not met as I'm doing this by myself at the site. Would it be possible, and this is where the request comes in, where we request now to the admin, would it be possible to meet sometime next week for an hour to strategize ways? And then these are the ways for you too. Obviously, we want to alleviate your irritation, your annoyance, and your frustration, and we want to build more support. So, and trust and that closeness. Would it be possible to meet one day next week for an hour on Zoom or on the telephone, whatever is very clear for you that you would like to do, to strategize ways that I might be able to receive support from admin or other staff to help me with the daily notes or whatever it is that is coming up. So and again, we can strategize together. That leaves it collaborative. So now we're opening up. Do you want to try one on your own on how that might sound for you, using those phrases in the 4-step process, or what might make more sense for you?
Yeah, actually, while you were saying that, while you're formulating that sentence or whatever, I just was reminded of another scenario, the same agency that I went through, and it was asking for support from admin for a group that I had that included a kiddo that was very mobile, like very active, wouldn't stay in one area. and he was also autistic. So there was a lot of needs for that particular student. And I didn't feel comfortable restraining him into a section, keeping him, because it's like, that's not the way I do therapy. I don't, it's supposed to be, I'm not even a consistent person. And when I show up there, I don't want to stress the children out. Like, oh, this person's going to come and make me sit again. And especially like sensory wise, like that's just not the way I do things. I'm not going to keep a child from like they're preschoolers. Okay. They need to move. So I asked for support in splitting up the group because they would group them, split them up sometimes, even though they were the same classroom. So I reached out to admin once about this particular student saying, I would love it if you guys can, I don't know if it's possible to split up. I explained the situation with the student that needed support. I wasn't able to support him in the current setting. And I asked if I gave him two options. One, can you split the group for me so that I can better help? Like it be smaller numbers, so 2 on 2 instead of the 4 altogether. Or could you send down someone to help so I can shadow them, like a supervisor, one of the supervisors? Can they come down, observe me or observe the student, and so I can shadow how they would do it, how they would do group session with the student who's very active, because I'm very curious to see how the higher ups would handle this situation. So yeah, the response was they were not able to split the group from me, and they didn't know when they could come down to help show me an alternative way. So eventually they just quietly split the group for me. So in the end, I did get that support. I did get what I asked for, even though the initial response was, no, we can't do either of those things. But eventually they did. So it was a little strange, but I did give back.
I'm hearing that you are prioritizing the well-being, the care, the respect for your pre-K kiddo, who you said is active, who you said is autistic, who you said has unique needs. And the group size was not supporting your need to support him. So you've had these unmet needs to really provide that quality care. So when I hear that, yes, it's this moment where we have to advocate. We have to go and say, we have to state the facts. When I see 4 kids and one of my students likes to move about the room and go over to whatever, and you describe the neutral observations, I'm not able to provide the level of care for that student. It's important that that student has the freedom to move about and express themselves in their own individual way to promote, the best communicative environment and opportunities. So I'm feeling really overwhelmed, or I'm feeling extremely worried, or I'm feeling concerned that that student is not getting the quality care that they deserve. So, we advocate, I need to strategize. I need to strategize how we can collaborate, how we can come together and figure out a way to put our students first and to look at their unique needs. I mean, that's why we have IEPs, right? Every child is an individual and very unique. So we need to sit down, and I would like you to maybe share, maybe we could meet next week and talk for an hour, because I'd like to know what you're hearing me say when I say this. I want to make sure that, you're understanding my perspective, but I also want to hear from you. I want to hear how you're feeling or what you're thinking when I say these things. And when I'm not getting that support, I'm wondering why. I'm wondering if maybe you could share for me what you were needing in that moment, what needs of yours that you had to meet when you said no. Because I advocate to saying no to all of this extra work, right? Because when we say no to one thing, we're saying yes to something else. So are other people. Not making it right, just saying, I want to connect with you. I want to understand your thought process on this. I want to sit down and have this heart to heart for us to truly understand what's going on. I want to hear your needs and I want to hear my needs. And now when I know I can hear both of those, maybe this will spark even new ideas we hadn't even thought of, right? Because that's innovation. When different people with different ideas, you don't want everybody all with the same view and same idea sitting down. You want different views, ideas, and diverse perspectives. That's innovation. So Yeah, so it's a matter of also understanding, bringing that empathy piece. And again, empathy is not acceptance, but empathy is saying, well, I just want to know, how does that land for you? Like, what do you hear when I say that? And if there is a moment where they're not hearing something in a way that you wanted to communicate, that opens up the dialogue for clarification. Now we can clarify, right? And we're getting to that more, the more that transparency. I hear where you might have thought I was feeling this way, but let me clarify. I'm actually feeling this way, or, this is actually what I'm needing. I didn't need. So it gives that opportunity for us to collaborate and strategize together. I always say it takes 7 no's until I'll get my yes. I mean, I keep going, right? I keep going because I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be the way I say it's going to happen, but maybe we could sit down and find a bunch of ways that it could happen. And then, you know what? Maybe still you never get your need met. And that happens too. That happens.
And I do want to add on that communication with your administration and all that isn't the only thing that actually helped that situation. Now that I think about it, I was always constantly communicating with teachers about their concerns as well as my concerns. I mean, they're the ones directly present during sessions. I feel like they are very protective of the students, especially when outside providers come and provide services. So I built a lot of rapport with them since the beginning. And I think I gained enough of their trust with keeping them in the loop of what was happening. So when I noticed it, they noticed it. They noticed my child wasn't sitting with me when they were supposed to be having speech. And they weren't trying to constrain him either, because it's like, well, I'm curious. They were probably curious how I would deal with that. And I would take some time near the end or during to bring my group over to where he was. But then he didn't like having so many people following him around. So we would
He was needing space.
Yeah, we would let him be for like the first half. And then the second half, I'd like go and follow him around, model language for him specifically on like what he was interested in going and what he was doing. So I mean, they noticed my efforts in trying to bring some quality care for him, meeting his needs where he was at. But I also communicated my concerns of like the limits of what I could do as a provider with that doesn't have support from their admin. I let them know I requested for help. My admin team hasn't gotten back to me yet, or hey, you know what? They got back to me, and they actually, now that I think about it, they mentioned to ask teacher for support in keeping him on the table. So at the table of the therapy table or whatever.
And that strategy wasn't going to meet the needs for everybody.
No. And also teachers are already so short-staffed. It was quite impossible to get anybody to come help support me when the classrooms themselves are in desperate need of support from others. So once the teachers noticed this, they felt that like I was communicating my struggles with them. They understood, they communicated with their higher ups at the sites. The people at the sites, site supervisors contacted my agency. And I feel like that's when the change happened, because they realized, oh, the site supervisors are not happy about this current setting, even though provider already mentioned it to them. It took a higher voice, I guess, or something for it to reach their ears to actually cause some change. So at my admin team, that's when they split the group and they realized, okay, this is a problem. But it wasn't like I was tattling. I wasn't trying to like get them in trouble and get my way. And it was genuine like concern, and me having this relationship with teachers, with the school, with the sites that I visit. So it's all genuine, even though it feels like it could have been like, oh, she did it to get back at us or something. But I mean, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that animosity at all. They did what I asked for. It took them some time, but I feel like communication with just your agency or whoever you're working for, it's not always effective, but open communication with others as well. Like whoever else you're working with directly can help make that change for you.
Yes. And I think it's interesting how you kind of talk about the power differentials too.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's always that piece is really important to think about. So I commend you on, talking with different professionals and getting their their opinions and their thoughts and insights from different staff. And it sounds like, you stuck to it and you were open to hearing from different people. And eventually admin was able to make it more of a win-win for everybody, a win to respect the students' unique needs, a win for you to have more relief in the care that you provide and making sure that you're respecting your clients and meeting your need to support them. And it sounds like the teachers' needs were also met too in that moment. And that built more trust between you and the teachers and more communication. So that is a win. When we are, if we're just saying, if admin's just saying, put the student at the table and have them sit there, that might be a win for admin to meet their need of not dealing with this. But that's not a win for you. It's not a win for the teachers. It's not a win for the students. So we really need to strategize. Okay, figure out what the main need is. And now we realize it doesn't just have to be that admin. That doesn't have to be the only answer. There can be a lot of other strategies, because that's not the answer, to supporting everybody that's involved. We have met our time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank you so much, Maggie, for being a part of this learning experience, for being open and transparent. And I don't know if there was any vulnerability in that for you. So just thank you for practicing and going through the process and being open to try that. And also for the questions you brought. I'm so grateful. It's been nice having somebody to talk to on this episode.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And I really appreciate the time and just the patience on your end too, because I've been a little swamped on my end to get back to you with a few things. So I appreciate the openness as well and the communication.
Thank you. If anybody wants to find out more about you or your resources, is there anywhere that you want to share?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. It's at Mags Dela Cruz. That's just no spaces, nothing, just like that, Mags Dela Cruz. It's mostly my personal. I don't have a speech presence yet. But that is on the cards for me. I'm thinking about making a speech page. So follow me on my personal account and I'll follow you back. If you have any questions, you could reach out. Yeah, anything speech, non-speech.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And we hope you have a great night. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for today's course. To complete the course, you must log into your account and complete the quiz and the survey. If you have indicated that you are part of the ASHA registry and entered both your ASHA number and a complete mailing address in your account profile prior to course completion, we will submit earned CEUs to ASHA. Please allow 1 to 2 months from the completion date for your CEUs to reflect on your ASHA transcript. Please note that if this information is missing, we cannot submit to ASHA on your behalf. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for joining us at SLP Learning Series. Remember to go to speechtherapypd.com to learn more about earning ASHA CEUs. We appreciate your positive reviews and support and would love for you to write a quick review and subscribe. If you like this and want to hear more, we are offering an audio course subscription special coupon code to listeners of this podcast. Type the word SLP Learn for $20 off. With hundreds of audio courses on demand and new courses released weekly, it's only $59 per year with the code. Visit speechtherapypd.com and start earning ASHA CEUs today.